Welcome to Not Your Mama's Midlife Podcast with Stephanie Lee. On this show, we're going to talk about the experiences of high-achieving men and women across industries and lifestyles who are at about the midpoint in their careers and are no longer satisfied to let their life happen to them. Together, we're going to purposefully create the second half of our lives by addressing burnout and overwork, getting clarity on how we're creating the experience of our lives, how we're conspiring to keep ourselves stuck, identifying and articulating what it is that we really want for the second half of our lives, and identifying a plan to achieve it. All right. This week on the show may feel a little bit different. I hope it feels a little bit different. I'm hoping for it to feel a little bit different for me, actually. I have aired now 32 episodes, 33 if we count last week's, which is an encore episode of episode number 4. And I'll be real honest with you. What struck me when I recorded episode 33, I did the intro live and the outro, and then went back and had the recording of last time for episode 4. And I was struck so much as I did the editing for that by how different my energy was when I was talking off the cuff and just talking to you all in the intro than what it was when I aired the recording that I did last summer. That was my 4th episode, so it would have been in July, right after I had launched the podcast. I knew when I launched the podcast that so many of the podcasts I love have a far more informal feel. They don't have that scripted nature, but I knew for me, there was no other option really, but to script the podcast and to know exactly what I was going to say. I was not at all comfortable with the idea of just speaking extemporaneously. But I really loved how it felt to watch it. I think I even liked how it felt to do it, even just on the intro, as I talked about it a little bit. And so I want to think about moving forward, letting the podcast be a lot more unstructured, a lot more informal, a lot more just me talking to you. And so, again, I think it's going to have a very different feel. And I hope you like it. I hope I like it. You know, when I started the show, I told you all this at the beginning that I knew that those of you who watched from the beginning were going to have an opportunity to really have a close-up look into how I would change over the course of the podcast, how my coaching perspective would change. You'd see all sorts of things that are sort of behind the scenes just by virtue of being with me from the beginning. And this is another one of those. You know, I think this is a sea change perhaps in the podcast, but perhaps what is bigger to me right now is that it feels also like a bit of a sea change for me. And I'll try to explain what I mean by that a little bit. I had really last week, but also over the course of maybe the whole month of February. So we've talked a lot about burnout on the show, being busy, being so busy that we keep ourselves really from attending to the important stuff in our lives. And I think what solidified for me finally, and I say this last week, is that I have had a lot of, very simply, the success that I've achieved professionally, personally, whatever, has really come about by having a sort of hard driving personality. Very type A, very much I'm going to get shit done, very much perfectionist. You know, I know how to do this. I want to be the one that's depended on. You know, of course, I'll do that additional project. Always very much the one who was perfectly fine with being assigned additional tasks because she was good at other things, right? You know, always seeking the next promotion and the next, moving up and more responsibility and more challenge. And it really struck me in February that that isn't me anymore, that somewhere along the course of the last couple of years, since I began coaching, since we lost my mother-in-law, which I've talked about in other episodes, which really caused me to look carefully at the trajectory of my life and my life with my husband and what we want for our life together. Somewhere over the course of that time, I have become, and I'm continuing to become, but I have become a different person who wants different things. I don't want to be hard driving anymore. I don't want to push hard for weeks so that I can then have a week off for vacation where I crash and hopefully get enough energy back to come back and do it again, a week or 10 days or whatever later. Um, it's just not the rhythm that I want my life to have. But it is the rhythm my life has always had. I mean, I would go back to looking to myself as a high school student and, being honors classes, AP classes, whatever, and working hard and studying hard and coming home and studying and just that very deliberate high achiever drive that, I buckle down is kind of the word that continues to come back to me. That's the way I've always done it. But there are other people that I look around and see, colleagues, friends, um, acquaintances, other people in the world who don't seem to have that same personality trait, that same drive, which I would have considered, you know, before being a deficit, perhaps for them. But now I'm looking at it and I'm saying, you know what? Actually, I think there's wisdom in that. I think there's more balance in that. And I think I want more of that in my life. So here we are. It's March. I did not pick words for this year because frankly, nothing resonated. I just couldn't come up with any word this year that was really very clear to me for what I wanted. But what comes to me now here in March are the words soft and slow. And I want more soft and slow in my life. And so that itself is a change. I don't want to go for the next thing. I don't want to go for the next promotion. I don't want to buckle down, work hard. And I say that it's not that I don't want to work hard. It's that I don't want to work hard from a driving, heavy, performance-based energy. I want to work hard from enjoyment, desire, excitement, positive emotions, from a far more relaxed stance. And I think some of that comes from not needing my worth to be based quite so much on whatever it is that I'm doing, which, we don't run around and talk about the fact that we're achieving to prove to people just how good we are, but there is an element of that in there. And so I don't want that anymore. I'm seeing it in others that I encounter in the world. I'm seeing some of the traits that I have possessed, um, a desire to always be right and to be sure everybody knew I was right and that I knew when something wasn't quite right. I mean, when I say it and when I look back on it, to me, it's just not very attractive. And it's also not what I want for my life now. What got me here, that hard driving energy, isn't going to get me to what I want for the next chapter of my life. And all of that isn't particularly clear, but I want to get there in a different way. And I don't know how many times in this episode am I going to say, I don't really know what that means. But I mean, I started this season, right? Or this year in my podcast talking about the goals that I have. So I have, a revenue goal for my business that I want to achieve. I have a weight goal that I also want to achieve. And I'll be honest with you on the weight goal. The international travel has not served me well. And I have come back and obviously been here more or less during the month of February, but had these other things going on. And I just simply haven't gotten back into focusing on my weight. So, that is something that is extremely important to me that I really want to attend to. And I have actually learned with the weight loss that I don't lose weight effectively by trying really hard, by depriving myself, by buckling down and getting real serious. I actually lose weight far more effectively by tuning in at the beginning of a meal to see how hungry I am and what that hunger feels like in my body, and making sure that as I begin that meal, I'm not up in my sympathetic state of my nervous system. Because if I'm activated, if I'm in that sort of fight or flight mode, which I mean, I can be up in the fight or flight mode from just getting takeout in Atlanta and driving in this traffic, right? So, but if I'm hyped up like that, I don't actually have the same ability to sense what's happening in my body and how hungry I am, which could be okay. But then I also don't have the ability to sense how full I am and when to stop eating. And I continue eating because the food is there, because it's the same amount I've always served, or because just eating it is a whole lot of fun, and some other things like that. But it still has me in a checked out place. It has me not tuned in actually to what I need and what my body needs in that moment. So what I'm finding is like efforting my way to weight loss doesn't work. What I need to do is, in fact, tune in, feel what my body needs, and eat accordingly. And when I do that, I see results pretty quickly. But it takes a lot to kind of let yourself do that. To When you have always been a hard driving person, to take your foot off the gas and just believe that tuning in more to your body's natural signals are going to allow you to actually achieve something maybe even faster. And so I'm experiencing the same in my professional work. I want to show up in my day job as a person with integrity and doing the job that serves our clients, our personnel, the people with whom we work, all of those people well. I'm not saying I want to back off of any of that, but I want it to come from a different place. I want the energy that I bring to it to be utterly different. This may seem totally crazy to you, and I'm just totally comfortable with that if that's the case. But the same is true of the way that I build my business. I want to build this business in a different way than I have built my professional career to date, with that striving and hard driving energy. I want this business, this coaching business, to be a respite. It's about growth for my clients. It's also about growth for me. And what I'm learning is that I am drawn to this idea of a softer and a slower way of life. And that's typified for me really almost by walking. Because I have always been somebody who sort of clopped around the house, with a very heavy foot. Everybody could hear me coming. And I always walk fast. I power walk. I posted something on Facebook not that long ago about my husband and I sort of like power walking to dinner at our vacation at a resort while the staff at the resort were strolling down the sidewalk. And yet here we are, the vacationers, powering down to be early for our reservation. And just that sort of energy I carry with me everywhere. And it is something that I want to let go of. And I want to find a new energy to bring to my day job, to bring to my goals, including my weight loss goal, and to bring to my business goals, including my revenue goals. So this feels like a new chapter. I think it shows up in the podcast in the fact that I am doing this off the cuff. I'm just sitting here talking to y'all. And some of you may enjoy that, and some of you may feel like it's pretty disorderly. And you know what? I'm good with that either way. But I want to continue to do this podcast and to show up in this podcast. But I also want to find a way to do it that feels less strivey, that's less of that hard driving, pushing energy. And frankly, the last couple months of episodes have felt pretty hard driving, have felt like I've really had to try to get them written, get them together, get them taped, get them edited, get the show notes up. And so I'm going to take some shortcuts and find some ways to streamline things. And I'm really interested, frankly, in what you all think and in what you all would like to hear about from me, because I know from hearing from you that my audience is a bunch of high achievers. And so I suspect that many of you identify with what I'm talking about the hard driving energy. But what I don't know is whether or not you identify with a desire for something different. Or do you just absolutely love and thrive on that driving energy? Is that totally working for you? Because I'd love to hear about that too. It's not my experience right now, but it doesn't have to be everybody's experience. And what else would you like to hear about on the podcast? I think specifically about the things that we want as we're looking towards the second half of our lives. What are the challenges that come up for you? Where do you get stuck? Where does your mind wander as you think about those things? And I'll tell you, I have been making some notes for future episodes and things that I want to talk about. I am thinking that because I'll be doing these episodes more off the cuff, they're likely to be shorter. And as I figure out what the best approach is. But some things I want to talk about going forward are creating a retreat for yourself, creating a retreat environment for yourself, what that could look like, a period of restoration. Also, teaching yourself how to coach yourself. You may have noticed on the podcast before, I'll talk about self-coaching, or I'll talk about how I self-coach, or the self-coaching model. There are some real easy ways that you can sit down with a pen and paper or your laptop and do some self-coaching that can be really useful to you. And it doesn't negate the need for a coach if that's something that you want to pursue, but there are some ways that you can do some coaching for yourself and with yourself that can be really useful. And that's why I'd like to purposefully teach you all some of that in an episode. And another episode that I would like to do is one focusing on how to hear your own voice. Because I experience, and I suspect many of you do as well, that all the mind chatter that goes on in my head, I'm hearing a lot of different people's voices. I'm hearing things I believe other people in my life would say, not necessarily have said, maybe said about something else, but they're sort of my interpretation of what they would say about whatever it is I'm thinking about. And I have found it useful to get to the root of what actually my voice is in that mix and what I think about the thing, and being able to tease that out from the other voices. And so I'd like to do an episode on that as well. So those are some of the things that are coming up. That is what is going on for me, and a little bit about what I wanted to share with you all today. I do want to mention something that I think is very exciting that I'm offering right now, which is small wins for big results coaching packages. I've talked to a lot of you who are feeling like the idea of a 12-session coaching package is just too much. One more thing you cannot add to your plate, something you can't handle right now, but there's this thing you'd like to work on, or maybe we could just deal with this. And I'd like to offer you some help with those small things, really, because the small things lead to big things. The small things snowball, and learning how to wrestle through and to coach through a small thing gives you skills that are then applicable elsewhere. So even if you choose not to continue coaching with me, you're going to have ripple effects of the one change that you've created in your life from those 3 sessions. And then you're also going to have acquired some skills that you can apply to other issues that are going to allow you to have some transformation as you move forward. You're going to want to get in on this. I have only a limited number of spots on my calendar in order to do these. Just send me an email or DM me on Facebook or Instagram. We don't have to have a discovery call to start this type of coaching package, but if you have questions, I want to be sure to set aside the time to answer those for you. So it's 3 50-minute sessions for $497 to deal with a area in which you want to get a small win. And I want to help you get there, and I can help you get there. And I do believe, and have experienced myself, that it is these small transformations that ultimately allow us to get the bigger changes that we want to see in our lives. And the small changes are sometimes just a whole lot more manageable than trying to take it all on at once. So reach out, tell me you're interested. Let's get started. All right. I appreciate you sticking with me for what is now the 34th episode of Not Your Mama's Midlife Podcast. I hope you join me back here on your favorite podcast player or YouTube for the next episode. And if you like what you're hearing, please do write us a review on Apple Podcasts. It's been great to spend this time with you this week, and I look forward to chatting with you again soon. Thanks. Bye.